A few years ago, parents on social media started panicking about something really weird. Their American toddlers were developing British accents. The culprit was Peppa Pig. Kids who'd binged enough episodes were saying mummy instead of mommy.
It's mommy.
Yep. Calling cookies biscuits, and even picking up distinctively British intonation.
May I have a bit of what, please?
The phenomenon got a name, the Peppa Effect, and it raised a question that linguists have actually been working on for decades. If a cartoon pig can change how a 4-year-old talks, what does that mean for the rest of us? We're all drowning in TikTok, Netflix, YouTube, podcasts, endless hours of voices from everywhere. So here's the question. Are accents and dialects actually becoming more similar over time because of technology? The answer is going to surprise you. It actually is this time. Stick around. This video is sponsored by Lingopie. So when I was traveling through Italy last year, I kept having these moments where I'd meet someone, a shopkeeper, a hotel owner, a guy at a bar, espresso bar, obviously. And I'd mention something small, like, oh, you're from Umbria. I've been watching this show about the borghi there, the little hilltop villages. And their whole face would light up. That's the thing about Lingopie. It's a language learning platform, but the focus is on letting you learn through real TV shows and films, actual content made for native speakers with dual language subtitles. You can tap to look up any word mid-scene. I was watching an Italian documentary series about the most beautiful villages in the country, because of course I was, picking up the language while also just absorbing the place. The landscape, the culture, local flavor. I wasn't fluent. Maybe this fall, I've been working on Italian again, but I knew enough to make people feel seen, to create a connection. And while that didn't open a lot of doors, I did get the occasional espresso on the house. Lingopie has libraries in 13 languages. If you want to start today, there's a free trial at lingopie.com/languagejones. And my link gets you 55% off the annual plan. Now back to the video. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving in to one of the most persistent myths in popular thinking about linguistics and language. The idea that mass media is flattening the way we all talk into some homogeneous, global accent. It's an intuitive idea, it's a reasonable idea, and it's mostly wrong. To understand why, we need to talk about a sociolinguist named William Labov, a vowel shift happening right now in cities you've probably been to, and why your group chat matters more than Netflix for how you actually sound. Let's start with the strongest counter-evidence. Beginning in the 1960s, William Labov, the founding father of modern sociolinguistics, and yes, it's pronounced Labov, who's one of my academic advisors, started documenting something happening across a huge swath of the United States. In cities like Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Buffalo, and Rochester's, vowels were rotating dramatically. Now, what does it mean for vowels to rotate? Oh, not that. At its simplest, it means you put your tongue in a slightly different place. Let's try to understand this. Imagine somebody in side profile facing left. If we could see inside their mouths, we would see that when they make different vowel sounds, the body of their tongue is in different places. When it's higher and fronter, you get your E, your A, and when it's down in front, you get your ah, and when it's down and back, you get your ah and aw, and when it's up and back, you get your oo. We can abstract this as a trapezoid and then fill in all the rest of the vowels, things like eh and So vowels rotating means the vowel you use in an entire class of words moves to a different position relative to a starting point. In places like Chicago, the word, well, let me ask you what you hear, just like Bill did. What word do you hear? Leave me a comment.
Black.
Now let me give you more of the sentence.
Living on one block.
And the whole sentence.
Old senior citizens living on one block.
Want to change your answer? So in cities in the northern US, block was starting to sound like black. Black was starting to sound like bleck. Bet was drifting towards butt. Linguists call this the Northern Cities Vowel shift, and it's one of the most significant sound changes happening in English right now. But here's the part that should stop you in your tracks. Here's why it's so significant. Or stop you in your treks on the black. This shift developed and spread during the golden age of radio, during the rise of television, during the era when everyone in America was supposedly watching the same 3 networks and hearing the same Walter Cronkite-style standard accent on every single night. Mass media didn't stop it. Mass media didn't even slow it down. People in Chicago, kept sounding more and more like people in Chicago, not like the news anchors beaming into their living rooms. Labov's conclusion was blunt. Passive exposure to a dialect through media does not cause people to adopt that dialect. You can hear a voice 10,000 times on a screen and it won't change how you talk. Something else is doing that. By the way, wait, that's not how language works? Is the feeling you want on repeat for like 6 weeks? That's literally my Intro to Linguistics course. Link in the description for the waitlist. Anyway, that's something else is the speech community. Here's the principle that linguists have arrived at. We learn to talk like the people we talk with, not the people we listen to. Language change happens through face-to-face interaction with people whose social approval we want. Your accent is shaped by your friends, your classmates, your coworkers, your neighborhood, the people whose nods of recognition actually matter to you. And this brings us to the Peppa Pig thing. Why does that effect seem real? Because toddlers are in an unusual situation. They have small speech communities, and they're forming their phonology from scratch. A cartoon they watch 6 hours a day, not my kid, hopefully not yours either, but you get what I'm saying, is genuinely a significant chunk of their linguistic input. But notice what happens. The second those kids start school and get embedded in a real peer group, the British features melt away. The speech community wins. It always wins. I had my own weird version of this that I noticed in my child and her peers, and her friends' parents didn't notice because it was what linguists call below the level of consciousness. For a while, my daughter had a Canadian accent. The culprit there was the voice actors on Daniel Tiger who say, "It was not a big scoop," or whatever. Thankfully, it's resolved. But if you or someone you love has been affected by a Canadian accent, know that help is available. And it does get better. It gets better. Results not guaranteed in Quebec, Nova Scotia, or PEI. And at least it wasn't full-on Toronto. Tutu's my guy.
Tutu's my word.
That would be hilarious. Leave me a comment, by the way, if you want to know what the hell is going on up in Toronto, Crody. Anyway, for everyone past early childhood, media is wallpaper. It's there. We absorb vocabulary and slang from it. Riz, delulu, no cap, spread through TikTok just fine. But vocabulary is the most superficial layer of language in this regard. The deep stuff, your vowels, your consonants, your prosody, the actual sounds of you, that comes from your community. Now, accents and dialects are changing, just not the way people assume. Linguists talk about two opposing forces. The first is dialect leveling. This is when distinctive local features fade and regional varieties become more similar to each other. And it does happen, but the mechanism isn't television. It's people moving. When populations relocate, when rural folks move to cities, when suburbs mix speakers from different backgrounds, dialects rub up against each other in actual conversation and kind of sand down their sharpest edges. Britain's estuary English spreading out from London is a textbook case. It's a face-to-face phenomenon driven by mobility, not media. The second force is dialect divergence, and this is the one that breaks everyone's intuition. In many places, dialects are actively becoming more different from each other, not less. The Northern Cities shift is the prime example. Those cities sound less like the rest of America today than they did 100 years ago. African American English has by many measures diverged from surrounding white varieties over the 20th century, not converged with them, thanks to segregation and natural drift. But also, Gerard van Herk has a very interesting paper that claims that the same forces behind dialect leveling, people moving, may also be at play here too as people try to sound distinct from the newcomers. The point is that dialect divergence is proceeding apace. Pittsburgh sounds more like Pittsburgh than ever before.
Like if I was explaining to Yins like what I do on Sundays.
Why would dialects diverge in an age of mass media though? Because the next piece of the puzzle. How you talk is not just a transmission system for words. It's a flag. It's a uniform. It's one of the most powerful tools that humans have for signaling who we are and who we belong with. It's a persona, to use the linguistics terms. Sociolinguists studying communities from Martha's Vineyard to Glasgow to Detroit have found the same pattern over and over and over again. When a local identity feels threatened or distinctive or worth claiming, people unconsciously lean into the features that mark them as local. That's why Van Herk's fear of a black phonology makes sense. A classic Labov study on Martha's Vineyard, maybe the classic Labov study, found that islanders who most strongly identified with the island, who didn't want to be lumped in with the tourists, produced the most exaggerated version of the local vowels. They weren't doing it on purpose, though. It wasn't actual exaggeration. Identity was steering their mouths. This is why a globalized, hyper-connected world doesn't necessarily produce a global accent. If anything, it can intensify the urge to sound like somewhere, to not be from nowhere. Your accent says, I'm from here. I belong to these people. You can place me. That's valuable, and it gets more valuable, not less, as everything else gets more interchangeable. There's one more piece of this that's too important to leave out, and I should probably make a whole video about. Across decades of sociolinguistic research and study after study, language after language, one finding keeps showing up. Women and girls are the leaders of most sound changes. You know that tag, the future is female? Well, linguistically, it's proven fact. They adopt new variants earlier, use them more frequently, and push them a little bit further than men do. The Northern Cities shift, led by women. The California vowel shift, led by women. Uptalk? Technically, high-rising terminal, the HRT that gets people the second most upset. Vocal fry, technically creaky phonation, the spread of new vowel qualities, disproportionately driven by young female speakers, all of them, who then get mocked for the very innovations that the rest of the population will be using 20 years later. So why? The leading theories point to denser and more linguistically engaged social networks, more attention to socially meaningful variation, and the role of young women as central nodes in the communities where change incubates. Whatever the precise mechanism, the pattern is robust enough that linguists basically take it as a given. Finding counterexamples would make a huge splash on the sociolinguistics conference circuit. So when you see headlines panicking about how teenage girls are ruining English, they're not ruining anything. They're showing you what English is going to sound like in 2055, in the year 2525. No, wait. So let's bring it home where the heart and the vowels are. Are accents and dialects becoming more similar because of technology? The short answer is no, not in the way people think. Media gives us shared slang and shared references, but it doesn't reshape our vowels. The Northern Cities shift developed in defiance of television, despite television. Local accents are in many cases becoming more distinct, not less. What actually changes how we sound is who we talk to, who we want to belong with, and who we want to be. And also just like time and drift. The Peppa Pigs grow up, they go to school, they find their people, and they end up sounding like them. Not like a cartoon, not like a news anchor, not like an algorithm. Like their community. Because that, in the end, is what an accent has always been. The sound of belonging somewhere. If you found this interesting, hit subscribe, drop a comment with the most distinctive feature of your local accent. And if you want to go from, neat, to actually being able to analyze this stuff yourself, my Intro to Linguistics course is open to join the waitlist. Link in the description. I'll see you in the next one. Happy learning.